welcome to Oxford Castle and Prison. My name's Leanne and I'll be your guide this afternoon. Thank you for coming, lovely to meet you all. So I'm going to be guiding you through 1,000 years of history, from escaping empresses to cruel Victorian punishment, telling you stories of love, murder, curses, and of course a few ghosts along the way. We'll be climbing 101 steps to the top of our Saxon tower, venturing down into our Norman crypt, and doing some time inside of the original 18th century prison cells. But let's start with the beginnings of the city of Oxford. It started as a small Anglo-Saxon town called Oxenford, protected by 4 stone towers: the North Gate, East Gate, South Gate, and West Gate, which is where we are now. We're currently standing in St. George's Tower. It's 1,000 years old and the oldest non-religious building in all of Oxford, something all of England, in fact. It was here long before the prison and even before the castle. You see, in 1066, when William the Conqueror invaded England, he defeated King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. Harold famously died with an arrow being shot straight through his eye. And then William gave Oxford to one of his favourite barons, Robert D'Oyly. In 1071, a castle was built around the tower that was already standing. It started as a Motte and Bailey castle, taking 200 Saxon slaves 8 months to build. I'm sure you saw the large grassy mound up front as you came in. Well, that was the motte of the Motte and Bailey castle, and on top was a tall 10-sided tower called a keep. Its job was to protect the inhabitants of the castle and watch over the castle bailey, which was a large defensive enclosure where the everyday business of the castle went about. Originally it was all built in timber before being replaced in stone a few years later on. And castles were built for defence, so used thick, high walls to keep people out. You can see these walls are 9 feet or 3 metres thick. Nothing was getting through those. But if somewhere is good for keeping people out, it's also good for keeping people in. And from 1216, it started to be used as a prison. Our first ever people locked up here were the drunken and disorderly students of Oxford University. Not much has changed now. They were slammed in a dungeon overnight in that hole down there within the entrance. Unfortunately, we can't get in there anymore, so we've been locked in. But they were really just kept there for a night, given a slap on the wrist and sent away in the morning. But in Victorian times, prisoners had it a lot harsher. You see, they used hard labour for punishments and to act as a deterrent for others in society. We were actually a working prison all the way up to 1996, believe it or not, and we never had toilets, right up until that point. Pretty bad. We have the only known surviving example of where a capstan wheel would have been in use, and it would have been behind you. This was a gruelling form of hard labour. The wheel is now gone, but I will explain what it would have looked like. It was a tall spoke rising up from the centre, and then 8 horizontal spokes coming out from that, chained to each spoke 2 prisoners, making 16 in total, all forced to walk round and round in a circle, pushing that wheel for 8 to 10 hours every single day. Would have been horrible. This is the original Victorian floor as well, so that's solid oak floorboards. Those grooves you can see in the circular shape, well, that's just from the prisoners' footsteps. No machinery involved there. That's simply from their steps wearing away into that wood over those years of miserable hard labour. And speaking of hard labour, we're going to do some of our own now. We're going to be climbing those 101 steps with a break halfway through. Don't worry, I'm in bravery as well. We warned these stairs were actually designed to kill you, so don't let them. Okay? They were purposefully designed to be uneven and of differing heights to trip up invaders storming the stairwell. They'd be wielding a sword in their right hand, not left. If you were left-handed, that would have been slapped out of you, and had to be right-handed. And so you'd be storming the stairs with a sword, and then if you fell, you'd inevitably stab yourself, meaning one less soldier to kill at the top. So ingenious, really. I don't see any swords today. Hopefully, no swords. Very good. But these stairs are spiral, narrow and uneven, so please don't attempt it unless you're sure you can do it safely. You might be quite dizzying today because of the heat. And if you don't want to climb, that's more than welcome to stay at the bottom. There's a film I can pop on for you, so just let me know if you are staying down here. Yes, mind your head as well. This is the tallest door in the tower today. They're going to get lower from there, alright? So watch it at all times. I banged my head literally just earlier, so just be conscious. I've done it a million times. So yeah, we're going to head up in a few seconds. Are we all wanting to climb?
Yeah.
Anybody staying down here? No. Okay, cool. All right then. All clear up to Matilda's room. Heading up to Matilda's room. All right then, guys, take your time. I love the handrail as we go and try not to die. Thank you. So, welcome to St. George's Tower. Many prisoners would have been kept in this very room over the years, but before it was a prison, it was briefly part of a royal castle with its very own princess, the Empress Matilda. She was the daughter of King Henry I, granddaughter of William the Conqueror, so her life was governed by power and politics from a very young age. In fact, she'd already been married off at 12 years old to Henry V, the Holy Roman Emperor, but she was left widowed at 26 and there had been no children in the marriage. So her father forced her to remarry, this time to a 13-year-old count. She was 26 at the time. She did not like the idea of this, but she was forced into it, unfortunately. She moved to France, married Geoffrey, and bore him 3 sons. They famously... Sorry? Yes, you're right. You know your stuff, probably know more than me maybe. Alright, so yes, he married Geoffrey. They famously hated each other, they never got along. But while Matilda was recovering from her second childbirth, the second son, her father suddenly died, leaving England with no monarch. Now Matilda was due to become the first ever Queen of England, but she was in France, and before she could get back, her cousin, Stephen of Blois, another grandchild of William the Conqueror, seized the throne and proclaimed himself king. So Matilda was left in France and then started a time of civil unrest and war called the Anarchy. But in 1139, Matilda's forces came back to England and she took Oxford as her royal capital, not ready to give up her right to the throne just yet. But by 1142, Stephen of Blois' armies had her surrounded and she was trapped here in St. George's Tower for 3 months of bitter siege warfare. Food began to run out, soldiers were ready to surrender, and so she needed to escape. And the famous story goes that one night, it was a snowy, dark December night, Matilda and 3 of her brave knights escaped out of that window, down a rope made from white bed sheets, no less. A little bit cliche, that one, isn't it? But then when she got to the bottom, she walked backwards in the snow, so her footprints led towards the tower, not giving away her escape. And then, this is the most extravagant part, it said she put on ice skates made from the shin bones of horses and ice skated down the frozen River Thames in December in a blizzard. So if she did, pretty badass of her, I say. But you know, who knows? Once she got to Abingdon, she rode on to Wallingford Castle and continued the war for a few more years. But despite this, she never became the first Queen of England, unfortunately. But she did live to see her son, Henry, become King Henry II. Stephen and Matilda finally settled their differences, and it was agreed Stephen would rule until his death, but he would name Matilda's son Henry as his heir. And Henry became King Henry II, the start of the Plantagenet dynasty that lasted for 300 years. So, if it hadn't have been for Matilda's daring escape that night, her family may never have gained power, and the course of English history could have been very different indeed. So good for Matilda, she's one of our favourites around here. If you look above you, these are the Victorian tanks where the water was pumped up to from the capstan wheel below during the Victorian times. There's another cell just like this above us and one more below us as well. And these were used to store prisoners primarily. In the 1640s, between 1642 and 1646, a civil war was raging between King Charles I and Parliament. And this is where they kept the parliamentarian prisoners of war. 60 men per room, in fact. And there's quite a lot of us on this tour today, but what, 20 or so? 60, so 3 times that. It would be very hard to sleep lying down, and they didn't have any access to toilets, and they didn't have any fresh water. So surviving accounts state men were standing in over their boots of human waste in these cells. But these floorboards have been changed. You're all right, it's fine. So there would have been much disease in these cells, and the bodies would simply have been piled up in the corner and left to rot. These cells weren't really cleaned, maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks if we were lucky, so it was notoriously an awful place to be. Soldiers were told better to die in battle than ever be brought to Oxford Castle. And when Sir Thomas Fairfax took Oxford in 1646, he was appalled by the awful mistreatment he saw here, and in response tore down Oxford Castle, so it can never be used against Parliament again. So the only thing we have left of the original castle is St George's Tower, the mound outside, and the crypt below us. The only reason St George's Tower still stands is because it housed a watermill, which was useful to the town. So at least we still have this. And on that note, we're going to head up to the top of the tower and see modern day Oxford. Follow me.